Hi, I'm Margarita. And this is my brother Ellie. He liked swimming, hiking, camping, doing things with his hands, hanging out with friends and family. But 5 years ago, when he was 14, we lost Ellie in a truck collision on the way to Yosemite Park on a family trip. To say that there are no words is an understatement because no words could bring Ellie back. And it's been a tough adjustment for everyone to get to this new reality where our brother, son, grandson, nephew, and friend is no longer here with us. And I noticed, especially from the perspective of a sibling, that there were very few cultural cues for how to find a new norm and what that even meant. And I knew that my brothers and sisters couldn't be the only ones going through this, finding a norm without guidance. And that's what got me here. If I could find resources for myself, then I'm sure I could help others as well. And so in my research, I found that this is a very common experience and very commonly traumatic. 1 in 10 people in America under the age of 20 have already lost a sibling, and a third of them say that it was the hardest thing that they've ever had to go through, and that their family never really recovered from it. And the same source found that more support from friends, family, and coworkers was critical to making this grief more manageable. And I started talking with other bereaved siblings in the fall, and I could sense how they really were shaken up to the very core of their identities by this, to the point where they didn't even know who they were. A social worker I spoke with explained to me that the younger you are and the more unexpected the loss, the more traumatic and life-changing it is. And that's basically the nature of sibling loss, given that it's outside of the natural life cycle like other types of grief. And I found a trend among most, not all, siblings that they weren't really talking about their brother or sister that much. If the subject of their brother or sister came up, it felt awkward because all of a sudden they had to broach the subject of death with someone that they might not have even met before. So they had reoriented to their sibling's death, but they were actually denying that they had ever lived. And I found that trauma translated to this very weird sensation that everyone I spoke with felt, which is that they were all of a sudden living in this alternate universe, separate from the one that they were living in before. So there was the universe where their sibling existed, and now they're in the universe where he doesn't exist. But some were sharing. Every so often, I found, especially on Facebook, I was finding on birthdays and anniversaries, people were sharing photos and memories with their networks. It's like they couldn't help but declare, my sibling existed and mattered to me. And speaking with these brothers and sisters, I saw that they were being able to share in this way, their ability to share in this way, even if it was just Facebook, it was a rare break from their isolated grief in the day of the life of a bereaved sibling. And it was rare not because they don't have stories. Of course they do. They share this unique bond with their sibling. But Facebook aside, siblings are not recognizing opportunities to share stories in everyday lives. So I saw room to innovate. How could I help siblings discover more opportunities to share stories and celebrate life? It looked to me like sharing stories was a successful way to weave those two universes together, your past self and your current self, so you can holistically be yourself again. You can remember that your sibling did indeed live, didn't just die. And you are still their sibling, no matter what. And that the memories that you shared, they did indeed happen. So that's what I confirmed in an early experiment with mood rings. And that was just a simple tool to make quick and dirty opportunities to share. So basically, I handed out 4 mood rings to 4 participants, asked them to wear it for a week, and every time someone asked them, why are you wearing a mood ring in 2016, it was a prompt to share a sibling story. And I wanted to know how it felt to share and what happened next after they shared. Sharing a story opened them up, especially with someone new. It gave them an in to relate on common ground, and it prepared them to be authentic when the sibling loss was later revealed. And the awkwardness that I talked about earlier about having to talk about death all of a sudden, it was replaced by this opportunity to share a major part of their identity that they were really hiding from the world, being this person's sibling. It was a sort of coming out of the closet, and it felt good for everyone. And so my next question was, what's a huge way to get people to really, really embody these things in a more natural, using a more natural tool than a mood ring? What's a natural storytelling device I could leverage to give siblings more opportunities to practice being this person's brother and sister to someone who, was a big part of who they are? And so I landed on tattoos. Those of you in the audience who have a tattoo know that if you like it or not, people will be asking you about the story behind your tattoo. So what if the meaning of your tattoo was associated with a happy memory of you and your brother or sister? It's one thing to memorialize your sibling with an RIP or angel wings or something like that. But what if instead of telling your family and friends and people you just met, my brother just died, you could start by saying, my brother and I used to, whatever. It didn't take much convincing to get 4 siblings with stories in hand to join me for this experiment. And surveys after a time show that everyone had shared their tattoo, of course, with someone they knew or new people that they were meeting. And the sibling story came up most of the time. And every time the sibling story came up, it was a positive experience. That's basically a paradigm shift from the awkwardness of explaining death to someone to reorienting to celebration of life. And an unintended consequence of this experiment was the friendships that I made with all of the participants. And I think those stem from the way we were able to be authentically vulnerable with each other in this real identity that we have, and also through the shared healing ritual that we went through together. So I knew I'd have to leverage that community aspect somehow. So tattoos work. I suggested it, and 4 people said, yeah, that's for me. But tattoos are not for everyone who've lost a sibling. I needed my intervention to do what the tattoos did on a larger scale, to provide more examples of opportunities to share our sibling stories so we can incorporate them into our everyday lives. And my role would be sourcing and sharing out examples of how siblings celebrate life, one-on-one, because I think that's where the magic is. If you want to know the meaning of my tattoo, you can ask me in person later. So that's why I launched a site and Facebook presence to collect examples from siblings one-on-one, like posting to friends on social media or a story tattoo or other everyday opportunities to remind themselves that they will always be siblings for life. So after capturing a sibling story, I turn our conversation into a shareable post. Each post features some advice from a sibling on how they're finding ways to celebrate. And the advice reads not just as advice to others, but also as a reminder to themselves. So Julie, that's a unique one. Grace, rock out to Blind Melon, like Scott's right there with you. Melissa, keep Jeff's scholarship going for young artists beginning their careers so he can keep producing art. And the post itself has the name of the sibling and their birthday and how they are celebrated. And associated social media incorporates the strength of community I learned from the tattoo experiment, and it lets Siblings for Life posts integrate into the news feeds of these siblings to allow this paradigm shift to be part of their daily consciousness. So siblings can share how they do it directly on the site, but most advice is being gathered through my conversations one-on-one with the siblings that I'm finding on the Facebook page and other grief groups online. And I am extending the reach through Facebook ads as well. Right now we have over 1,100 likes from around the world, and I've noticed that a lot of them are coming from war zones in the Middle East and Africa, as well as sites of natural disasters, which is very interesting. And I'm also partnering with the admins of larger online grief groups that I have joined in order to tap into their networks and reach more siblings. And my next steps will include reaching out to therapists in order to integrate this into their practices and reach their patients. So just to give you an idea of an example of an experience of one sibling, this is Alicia. And she told me that it was beautiful to see the post about her and her brother, and she could feel how opposed it was to the way she'd been living her life. She had to keep rereading it to really get it, but she got it. Like the other siblings on Siblings for Life, they didn't just die, they also lived. And we will always be their brothers and sisters, and that's because our memories with them are real. So I've recognized that, while sibling loss is common, chances are most people in this room haven't experienced it. So I'd love to leave you with a suggestion for when you are face-to-face with a bereaved sibling. Instead of saying something like, sorry for your loss, or everything happens for a reason, I would encourage you to take this opportunity to reorient towards life and say something more satisfying that really gets you that connection that you're going for when you're trying to think of something to say in that moment. You can ask them to tell you a story. So you can be able to say, wow, you know what? I wish I would have known him. That's very satisfying, I found. And it's a beautiful way to affirm that a life was lived and not just lost. And this is for Ellie and all my brothers and sisters. Thank you.